It's that time of the year already, eh? The one where a season of Survivor finishes up, and boy, there were quite a few controversial issues with Survivor that we need to discuss. The first issue is probably the most obvious, and of course that is the double quits on the season. This discussion point has been done to death, so quite frankly I don't know what to say that hasn't been said before. I still don't know how in the modern era we've been getting people still quitting the game. Not to mention this is actually the earliest we've seen so many quits on the show. 4 episodes in, and 50% of the eliminations are people voicing they don't want to be there anymore. This on top of the Jackson ejection, literally only 2 days into Survivor 42, makes the future of modern Survivor seasons honestly quite worrying. That being said, I do have to remind people that these are human beings as well. There is no need to damage their personal life, even if you feel they stole your spot on a reality TV show. Come on folks, we're better than that. Nevertheless, I think it really shows how dire the situation is when even Jeff, who normally defends contestants, outright said on the On Fire with Jeff Probst podcast that he was disappointed. And on that topic, let's talk about the On Fire with Jeff Probst podcast. Sure, it wasn't part of the official show, but it was advertised as something to watch after each Survivor 45 episode, so I feel justified in covering it. I think compared to Survivor 44's rendition, these podcast episodes were quite an improvement. The flow was better, there was a stronger structure, and notably less quote-unquote yes man energy. As a new addition, we had Rick Devens, who bounced off Probst well, and explained the perspective of advantages, plus describing playing on the bottom well. Playing in the majority, I felt he couldn't articulate as well, due to obviously being on the bottom for the majority of Edge of Extinction. Plus also Rick is a quote-unquote older school player, and sometimes I felt he couldn't fully relate to the modern era contestants plus twists. Potentially someone like Erica would have been amazing to see as a guest for the next podcast, as she was on the top, the bottom, could relate to the modern era, and also has a fun energy. But honestly, if Devens returns, I wouldn't be mad, as he was pretty entertaining. One thing I really disliked about this podcast though was the constant bashing on interview coaching services, particularly, let's just call a spade here, Adam Klein's coaching services. For anyone that doesn't know, prior two-time contestant and season 33 winner Adam Klein has a coaching service you can avail of where he helps prep you get onto the show. Jeff, multiple times at random points in these podcasts, would move from a topic of conversation just to bash on these coaching services. It comes off as unprofessional, almost, as if for some reason he has a personal vendetta against these organisations like Adam's. I feel production sees this as them not getting full credit for the casting, one of the things the community has almost universally established is still good. But I don't really see it that way. Casting coaches aren't forcing people into saying they are what they're not, but rather using their experience to tell people how to pitch themselves in a more viable way. So again, I'm not a fan of Jeff's callouts. However, both Rick and Jeff did usually have a fun back and forth in this podcast, especially with the host versus player perspective, so overall it was a pretty welcomed addition to my Survivor viewing experience. Something that wasn't quite as welcomed is this tyrannical agenda production seems to have with contestants losing their vote. For example, did you know that for the entire game there were only 6 tribal councils where the entire cast actually voted together at the tribal council? If this wasn't insane enough, this was actually one of the better outcomes for the show. Austin wouldn't have been able to vote if it wasn't for him having the goodwill advantage, which production gave to Caleb, who then gave to Drew, who then gave it to Austin. The Sean Tribal Council had everyone vote, but it was controversial if this vote should have happened, considering Sean would have quit if he wasn't eliminated anyway, and this Tribal Council almost sunk Dee, the eventual winner, plus her game. Emily's blind side had everyone voting, although Emily could have lost her vote to a clearly last minute twist. Watching lots of people lose their votes is not a fun TV experience, and I'm sorry to anyone on production that thinks otherwise. It stifles gameplay, makes the show come off as manufactured, and harms players' agency. For example, at the final 9, the losing group of 3, Katurah, Emily and Austin, could earn their vote back by completing a challenge. Austin succeeded, and Emily as well as Katurah failed, meaning the Reba 4 had all their votes, and at a pivotal part of the game, the 5 outsiders only had 3 votes. Therefore, they couldn't do anything to flip the game on them. Honestly, I think it's questionable enough bringing the tribe together to earn the merge, only to divide them back into tribes again, but I was holding out on the return of an authentic final 9 round. But no, after the 3 groups of 3 twists that caused a third of the game to potentially lose their vote, we once again missed out on the most important round of gameplay in Survivor, in my opinion. I don't get why production does this. For example, over the past 10 seasons, we've missed out on an actual final 9 round of the game 50% of the time. The other 50% have some of the biggest blindsides ever in Survivor history, like the Kane blindside, Sophie being eliminated 4-3-2, Karishma blocking 7 votes with her idol, forcing Elizabeth to be eliminated on a 1-1 revote, and the 5-4 Kelly Wentworth plus Carl vote-offs in Edge of Extinction, and David vs Goliath respectively. Even if you want to check out the boot order for some older seasons in the 30s and 20s, you'll probably be shocked at how many big moments happen once the final 9 round comes around. Consequently, we see agency being cashed in for modern Survivor's perpetual mentality of keeping the vote pool small, as once again we as the viewers miss out. And I actually have an apology and an addendum of sorts to make. In one of my previous videos where I ranked every modern Survivor twist, I previously said the 26-day format wasn't great, but also wasn't outright offensive. But with this season in particular, I've got to say I officially don't like the 26-day format. For anyone that isn't aware, Survivor 45 had 90-minute episodes, a 30-minute bonus compared to episodes previously, and production knew this coming into the season. So with more screen time to fill, and some TV episodes literally being filmed across the span of one day, production was further incentivized to create more of these time-consuming twists. Now some weren't bad, as I enjoyed the puzzle dilemma for the safety without power, even if it had a locked base final stage, which doesn't really work well with the challenge being time sensitive. But when fans asked for the return of the auction, did we really need to stretch it on for an entire 20 minutes, only for it to be turned out to be a glorified random number generator to determine who lost their votes? But on the topic of rewards, we had the Sanctuary feature more than ever, and while it was good seeing production trying not even to pretend this was the toughest season of Survivor like in 41 or 42, man, this style of reward is lame. Jeff can use the words homely or primitive to describe the rationale for this new reward style, but it really is a bare shelter with a few food items. Even other seasons like Survivor 33 to 38 showed you can still film in Fiji and have impressive reward locations like boat cruises or mud spas. But ignore all that because we have this sanctuary where good things happen, like making a vegan eat chicken.
I have not eaten chicken for 15 years. And chickens are my favorite animal. But I'm about to eat you right now.
And really an issue I've had with Survivor for a while is that it seems like they haven't catered to some types of contestants well. In my aforementioned example, after not eating meat for years, Kendra was part of the winning group of the 3 that got a chicken reward. Now I'm an omnivore, so the best I can do is empathize with Kendra, but imagine spending over a decade making a lifestyle choice as well as advocating for other benefits, only to have to eat meat on a televised show for millions, or starve. I know people will relate this back to the likes of Hai, a vegan, eating crab on Survivor 42. Really, that's the survival aspect of the show. I don't think even the most hardcore of vegans would advocate for Hai being able to cash in that crab for some pre-prepared vegan meal, but this is a reward. With the increasing number of contestants that don't eat meat, either due to health, religious views, or believing it will make the planet a better place, I feel there should be reasonable alternatives in place on rewards. It really comes to the fact that you shouldn't feel guilty just because you're experiencing a reward on Survivor. People may call me a snowflake, but Survivor has done this a lot in the past with reward challenges. Angelina was allowed non-meat alternatives in David vs Goliath, and Nora was able to swap her steak out for roasted mushrooms at the final 5 Island of the Isles reward. Even earlier on in the season, there was a dilemma for BLT sandwiches, except they didn't all contain meat. J Maya was one of the contestants in the infamous Sandwiches vs Amulet debacle and was openly vegetarian. I'm not sure if this was lifestyle or if it was through her Hindu religion, but nevertheless, production, to give them their credit, swapped one of the sandwiches out for one that had veggies so J Maya could enjoy it. So it's weird that even within this season, there are inconsistencies of what production are willing to do for different contestants. But this has been an issue I've had with Survivor since the beginning of the franchise, quite frankly. Noelle in Survivor 43 was an amputee, but struggled with a lot of challenges, and even some sections and challenges were borderline impossible for her to complete. Tommy Sheehan, eventual winner of Survivor Island of the Idols, found an idol clue at the final 5, but couldn't decipher it because it was colour-based, and he was colourblind. This instead forced him to tell Dean about the clue, and Dean went on to find the idol for himself. If it hasn't already been clear, I feel at some point, such as in rewards or twists, production could do better to include more contestants and their needs. The editing was mostly good. It helped that the episodes were 90 minutes, so the editors didn't have to storytell at a breakneck pace. That being said, I do firstly question why the eventual quitters in Hannah and Sean got such sizable edits and positive edits, including them both getting episode titles. It feels largely counterintuitive to take screen time away from contestants that actually tried their hardest in the season, only to be superseded by people that eventually didn't want to be there. The Reba 4, while well edited, were pretty clearly established as the group that were going to run the game from pretty early on. Plus, in the end game, it felt very reminiscent of Ghost Island, with Katurah edited to be very similar to Laurel in my opinion. They always flirted with the idea of making a move against the Reba 4 almost every episode, but instead just sided with them, making some of the later episodes rather repetitive. While Sifu and J Maya had underwhelming edits for people that made it past the tribe stage, I feel everyone from the jury and on had a level of screen time where I could understand their game aspirations. So at least that was one positive pertaining to the presentation of the cast. And really, the overall makeup of this cast leaves me scratching my head. While I understand why each individual contestant was selected, it's really the cast as a whole I'm unsure about. Mirroring criticisms others had about the cast in Survivor 41 to 44, there was an overrepresentation of white-collar jobs, which is unfortunate considering one of the few benefits of the 26-day format is that with less days on the island, it's more viable for a wider pool of contestants with different jobs to be represented. And as we saw in Worlds Apart, although a small factor, the job sector you work in can very much influence your outlooks. So potentially in the future I would like to see more jobs, especially blue collar jobs, represented on the show. But I also have an issue with the age diversity on this cast. To make this video interactive, how about we play a game? In terms of youth, where does the Survivor 45 cast rank? Is it A, the 15th youngest cast in Survivor history? B, the 10th youngest cast in Survivor history, or C, the 5th youngest cast in Survivor history? Well, if you answered A, you're wrong. If you picked B, then sorry, but you're also wrong. However, for those viewers that picked C, you're also wrong. Yep, I lied, I'm sorry. This cast, astoundingly, has the 3rd lowest average age on a Survivor season, only to be topped by China at number 2, and Ghost Island, a cast with infamously awful age diversity, at number 1. This really just feels like a step backwards from previous modern Survivor seasons, and it's really disappointing to see no representation for people in their 50s, considering how fun Brad, Mike plus Gabler were. Even the only 2 individuals in their 40s, Julie and Bruce, were some of the biggest characters in this season. This cast had no people in their teens, early 20s, late 30s and early 40s. If you take Bruce and Julie off the cast, there is literally only 12 years between the youngest contestant and the oldest. A small but vocal portion of the community have advocated for a mandate in terms of age diversity, and I don't disagree. Personally, I would want the youngest and the oldest contestants on a cast to have at least 30 years difference in age. This would allow for 3 decades of different life experiences and outlooks. If you cast your oldest person at 49 like Julie, I better see some teen representation on that cast. If the youngest person were to be 23 like Survivor 45's Drew, then I think seeing a person in their mid-50s would be great. It may be a pipe dream, but I think it would be a robust mechanic to ensure a well-rounded cast age-wise. The almost universally hated 3-tribe format returned for its 5th season in a row, and while we did get a swap, which shook up the dynamics, it only ended up in going back to 3 tribes. But fear not, because Survivor 46 is just around the corner, with 3 starting tribes of 6. Again. Many new twists are also convoluted. What if someone like Emily chopped the rope around the tree and found the Beware idol? Would she be allowed to have it? Would production have to get everyone out of the forest to put it back? Would Sabaya even get her vote back? If Drew uses a safety without power on Bruce at the Mergatory, does he kill his idol because he can't use a vote to restore it? Does he have to lose his vote at the final 12, even though the contestants aren't on the same beach? These idols were also super awkward. While I loved the journey vibe as the contestants had to solve a mini solution at each part of the island, to do all that for an idol that inherently only works for one tribal council is a raw deal. Not to mention the Lulu idol was completely flawed, as even identified by Jeff. The tribe didn't have Flint, and because they never won an immunity challenge, it forced Sabaya to show Emily she had an idol. On the topic of convoluted twists at the final 12, the contestants were split into 2 tribes and had to live on different islands, which is a twist that harmed contestants' games. In Survivor 44, Matthew left his bag at camp, meaning he couldn't use his shot in the dark. Now in Survivor 45, Drew couldn't use his safety without power because it was in his bag at the final 12 and it expired after that round. And Sifu couldn't use his fake idol to get the votes off him like he intended because it was in his bag on the other beach. In previous Survivor seasons, even in the Survivor 45 swap, production passed contestants their belongings when they ended up on a new beach, so it's still so inconsistent. Should the contestants really take all their belongings to every challenge and twist from here on out at the merge in case they get separated? I didn't think so. Okay, so for context, this video was supposed to be the second of a 2-parter, where firstly I covered everything positive with Survivor 45. However, within the first 4 episodes of the franchise, I made a video praising production, and that's really most of my positive thoughts about the franchise. This isn't to say Survivor 45 is this abysmal season. It's actually my favourite of the modern seasons, and I know a lot of people watching this video would agree with that sentiment. But as I was writing the script for everything positive in Survivor 45, I just felt I was rehashing a lot of the same points, and I'm not going to mostly repost the same video, just to cash in on hype. So most of my pre-season points still stand. On the topic of that, this season had some of the best modern Survivor blindsides, and the likes of Sabaya, Kelly, Bruce, Emily, and Julie, on top of Caleb's record-setting shot in the dark play. I liked quite a few individual storylines, and the final 3 contained very different games. Jake really tried to pull off big moves, but often lacked the social capital to bring it into fruition. Austin was the king of advantages, and is just generally a lovely person. Dee played a really strong game in my opinion, with even X suppressed from the contestants, reaffirming parts of her strong social game that the edit left out. I think she's a very strong winner for the franchise, and survived the twists plus turns seen in modern Survivor. I know I ask this of you a lot, but subscribing to the channel would really help me out. Today is the 8th, and so is my birthday, marking 22 years alive on this earth. Whoopee. So as a birthday treat, if you could, click the subscribe button and that would mean a lot. If you want another season review, I covered the squirrely topic of Survivor UK 2023. Comment down below your thoughts about this season as well as this video. I am open to any criticism, but nevertheless, have a good day, and peace!